Ladies and gentlemen, this is the ship's captain speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 914. Please fasten your seatbelts and refrain from smoking. We'll be taking off in 5 minutes. Once we're at the right altitude, you'll be served drinks. Our flight will take 37 years. Enjoy your flight. How would you have acted if you were going to a different city and ended up in another country? I think only adventurers would appreciate that kind of situation. But for most people, it's not likely to be acceptable, and I'm sure even the most adventurous of adventurers would raise an eyebrow when they find out the flight took almost half a century. On July 2, 1955, Pan American Flight 914 was flying from New York to Miami, Florida. It was a beautiful sunny day with 57 passengers on board eager to get a jump start on the inviting beaches and palm trees of Florida. The plane took off without any problems, but 3 hours later, when it was supposed to land at its destination, communication with the air traffic controllers in Miami was lost. They didn't see any aircraft in the vicinity on their radar. No distress signals were being sent out. When they contacted their colleagues in New York, they received an unexpected response: Flight 914 had dropped off the radar. All indications were that the plane had disappeared. The plane had vanished into thin air and the pilots could not be contacted by radio. A plane vanished without leaving any trace of itself or the people on board. An investigation was launched immediately. The plane's route was partially over the Atlantic Ocean, so the only reasonable explanation seemed to be a crash. Authorities were notified immediately, and their Coast Guard began to search the waters. However, the search was in vain, and not a single part of the missing liner could be found. Everyone was bewildered and shrugged their shoulders in bewilderment. 61 people, including crew members, disappeared along with the huge machine. Despite extensive efforts, the case was never solved. The authorities officially announced that the plane had crashed and that no one on board had survived. Despite well-founded questions from grieving relatives, no one has been able to say what really happened with Flight 914. This has been the case for 37 years. It's September 9, 1992. Juan de la Corte, a dispatcher at the Caracas airport, starts his normal day by coming to work, making a coffee, sitting down on a chair and studying the sky. He makes minor comments about current flights when suddenly, something strange happens. A new dot appeared on the radar out of nowhere. The object appeared as if it had been there by magic, or perhaps hiding, and then decided to come out of the shadows. Anyway, it was strange to see him not far from a civilian airport. Juan checked the data several times, assuming it was a mistake, but the readings were normal. In less than 10 minutes, the object appeared in the field of vision of Juan and his colleagues. At first, the air traffic controllers mistook it for an ordinary plane, but as it approached, they realized it was a very old passenger DC-4 McDonnell Douglas equipped with propellers, not turbines. These types of planes were still used, but they were being actively replaced by modern ones. However, the real confusion started when the pilot of the mystery airliner asked the dispatchers on the radio, "Where are we?" Shift supervisor Juan de la Corte replied, "You're approaching Caracas Airport," and specified the ship's destination. There was a pause, then the pilot replied, "This is Pan American Flight 914, en route to Miami, Florida, with 4 crew members and 57 passengers." These words finally confused the dispatcher. Here, nearly 2,000 kilometers from its destination, was an American airline? How did it get here in the first place? Juan promptly asked the pilot several additional questions, but the answer stumped him. The pilot said the flight was supposed to land at Miami Airport at 9:50 a.m. on July 2, 1955. The dispatcher was silent. He was afraid to ask anything else for fear of exacerbating an already difficult situation. Eventually, he gave the go-ahead. The dispatcher didn't know how to react to what the pilot said. Maybe the pilot has gone crazy? However, there were people on board and one had to make sure that the plane would land and then ask questions. The ground services were given orders to help the aircraft and passengers. The landing was successful. Juan finally decided to ask the question that had been tormenting him. Did you know that today is the 21st of May, 1992? A pause. He realized he'd made a big mistake. The employees were already next to the plane. When the pilot puzzledly asked, "What do you mean?" That's when the dispatcher realized he knew he had to ask security for help. However, as soon as the employees made their way to the plane, the pilot did something no one expected. Juan could clearly hear the captain panicked and shouted, "No! Get back! We're leaving!" And indeed, the engines roared. Then, without any permission, the plane headed for the runway. Juan tried to radio to stop the pilot, explaining that he was putting everyone in danger. The pilot didn't answer. The plane pulled into the runway, accelerated, and took off. For a while, he could still be seen in the air, but then he was just a dot on the radar, and then vanished. Words cannot describe the state of mind of Juan de la Corda and his colleagues on the control tower. Just before them, out of nowhere, a vintage airplane appeared in front of them, saying that they were on their way to Miami. Before they could react, the aircraft was gone, vanishing into thin air like a collective hallucination. No trace was found at all. To this day, no one can explain what happened that morning in Caracas. Do you feel there's a catch here too? I should point out that the credibility of this case has been a lot of controversy. It was first reported in the newspaper, World News, in 1985. Yes, exactly 1985, 7 years before this event took place in reality. Later, the same newspaper, twice, retold the story, changing the details, and setting 1992 as the date of the return of the time-traveling flight. The photo of the dispatcher, Juan de la Corte, also differed from the original in past years. The story was officially recognized as fake and became a common urban legend. But the legend lives on. Many sources retell it differently, with some even claiming that the passengers of the liner looked exactly the same as they did 37 years ago, despite the fact that their relatives and friends had aged. It is claimed that doctors examined the crew and passengers, but found no abnormalities. The people were healthy. This part of the story is not convincing at all, as there isn't a single piece of evidence that a single passenger was able to return from a decades-long flight. Think about it, how can you go that many years without aging or changing? The only thing that keeps the interest of fans of the paranormal alive is a pocket calendar that supposedly fell out of a mysterious plane during a visit to Caracas Airport. It's dated 1955. If the rumors are to be believed, it's the only evidence of this strange occurrence. Some claim the calendar is real, but there isn't a single shred of evidence to support its existence. However, who knows? Maybe it's just a fairy tale, an urban legend, or part of a conspiracy to cover up the possibility of time travel. We may never know. What do you think? Did Flight 914 really get lost in time for 37 years? Or is it fiction? Let me know in the comments if you learned something new today. If you liked this video, please like it and send it to your friends. See you later.